A simple bricklayer, a modest lunchbox, and a lonely boy in a wheelchair. Without knowing who he was, he shared his food, his time, and his heart. He ignored judgment. He did good in silence. But what he never imagined was that the boy carried a powerful last name, and that his small gesture, insignificant to many, would change his life forever. Stay until the end, because this story will remind you of the value of a single act and the cost of having a kind soul. The sound of cement being mixed in a bucket, the scrape of shovels against the ground, the echo of nails hitting wood. It all blended with the hot smell of fresh concrete. For most people, it was just another workday. But for Cícero, it was another day surviving with dignity. There, between the calluses on his hands and the weight of the cement bags on his back, he earned his living. He never complained. Always quiet. He carried out his tasks with precision and respect. He wore the same worn-out clothes and faded cap he'd had for years. And when the clock neared noon, he would step away from the noise, sit in a quiet corner of the site, pull out his dented aluminum lunchbox, and eat in silence, almost always alone. It was during one of those lunch breaks, on a hot afternoon, that Cícero noticed something different. On the other side of the fence, there was a boy sitting alone in a wheelchair, still watching. He looked no older than 10, wore an oversized blue shirt, with the collar slightly askew. The wheelchair was simple, a little worn. His eyes were alert, fixed on the workers. He didn't smile. He just watched in silence, head slightly tilted. Cícero frowned, puzzled, but said nothing. He continued eating and occasionally glanced at the boy, trying to figure out where he had come from. There were no adults nearby, no guardian. The next day, the boy was there again. Same spot, same gaze, same silence. By the third time, Cícero decided to approach. With slow, careful steps, he walked around the site, crouched down to the boy's level, and gently asked, "Are you thirsty, kid?" The boy didn't answer. He just looked at him for a few seconds, then nodded. Cícero smiled softly and passed a small bottle of water through the opening in the fence. The boy took it calmly, drank slowly, and returned it. His eyes sparkled for a moment, but he said nothing. "Do you come around here often?" Cícero joked, still crouched. "Do you like watching mess we make?" Nothing. Not a single word. But something had passed between them. An invisible bond had begun to form. That same day, at the end of the work shift, Cícero walked back to the fence before leaving. The boy was still there. Still, as if waiting for something. Cícero thought of asking about his family, but something inside him told him not to push. Instead, he simply said, "Tomorrow, if you come back, I'll bring you a piece of cake my wife made. But only if you promise to come." The boy smiled. Small, subtle, but enough. The next morning, just as promised, Cícero brought not only the cake, but also an extra portion of his own lunch. And the boy was there. Same time, same silence. The bricklayer shared his food through the fence, improvising a clean cloth on the wooden beam where the boy rested his arms. They sat there in silence, one on each side of the fence, sharing the little they had. The boy didn't need to say a word. Cícero understood every glance, every gesture, as if they had known each other for years, as if silence was a language too. From that day on, it became a routine. While the other workers laughed loudly, talked about soccer, or told jokes, Cícero remained steady in his quiet act of generosity. No one understood why he gave so much attention to a boy he didn't even know. But to him, no explanation was needed. After all, some things are done without expecting applause. Some gestures are born from the soul. And even if he didn't know who that boy was, Cícero knew exactly what he needed: respect, care, and humanity. Days went by. The routine on the site stayed the same. Dust in the air, trucks coming and going, cement drying under the scorching sun. But for Cícero, each morning brought something new. He no longer woke up thinking only about beam measurements or the wall he had to build. He thought about the boy. Would he come today? Was he okay? Would they have time to talk, even if only with their eyes? The boy came every day. Same time, same spot. But now, besides just watching, he smiled when he saw Cícero. A shy smile, but full of meaning. And it was just for him. Cícero began saving larger portions of rice, more generous pieces of meat, sometimes even a little homemade dessert. He'd tell his wife, Today I'm sharing lunch with a new colleague. A good one. At the sight, the sarcastic remarks began. Is Cicero starting a daycare now? Did he become a babysitter? Laughter from workers covered in cement and arrogance. Is he going to adopt that mute kid? Thinks he's in a movie or something? Cicero didn't respond. He just smiled, adjusted his worn-out cap, and kept walking with his lunchbox. At lunchtime, he'd sit near the fence, where he had set up a board between two bricks so the boy could eat more comfortably. He offered food patiently, fresh water, and always save an extra plastic fork. And even though the boy never said a word, he always ate everything. He looked Cicero in the eyes and sometimes held his hand before leaving. That was enough. One especially hot day, the boy arrived earlier than usual, sweating from the effort of pushing his wheelchair over the uneven sidewalk. Cicero dropped his shovel and ran to him. Easy, kid. It's way too hot to be in the sun. Without thinking twice, he took a tarp he had stored in a corner and set it up between two stakes. He made some shade, placed an old cushion on the wood, prepared the spot where the boy always Saturday. Now we've got VIP seats, he joked, laughing. And for the first time, the boy gave a wide smile. A smile full of gratitude, of relief, of belonging. As other workers passed by, they shook their heads mockingly. Does that kid even have a family? One asked. Probably not. Bet they abandoned him. They probably don't even know he snuck out. Another one said, laughing. Cicero looked at them seriously. Even if he did sneak out, a child never asked to be left behind. Silence cut the chatter instantly. That day, the boy didn't just receive food. He also got a clean shirt. One of Cicero's. It's a bit big, but it'll protect you from the sun, he said, gently adjusting the collar. No one had to know. He did it because he believed dignity was a right and humanity a duty. At the end of the day, as they said goodbye, the boy reached out his hand once more. But this time he held it tight, and for the first time he hugged him. Cicero stood still. Then he gently returned the hug, patting the boy softly on the back. In that moment, the wooden fence between them ceased to exist. There, among cement and dust, something stronger than any wall was being built, a bond that only the heart can raise. The sun had barely crossed midday when the boy arrived again, but something was different that day. Cicero noticed it from afar. The boy was moving slower, his hands tired on the wheels of his chair. The smile was still there, but a new weariness filled his eyes. Without a word, as always, he positioned himself in the same place as every day. Cicero approached with a slight look of concern. "Are you okay today?" he asked, knowing there would be no reply. "You look tired." The boy simply looked at him for a moment, as if saying, "I'm okay, just tired," and smiled. Cicero sighed, took out his lunchbox, sat on the ground, and shared rice with beans and pieces of chicken. The boy ate slowly, as if savoring the gesture more than the food. Meanwhile, in the background, the coworkers laughed loudly. Look at the dad of the pet, giving him lunch again. Soon he'll be bringing him diapers. Cicero pretended not to hear. More than that, he didn't care. To him, that boy was already part of his routine, part of his day, part of his life. Then the screech of tires broke through the scene. Everyone stopped instinctively. A sleek, black, high-end car pulled up gently in front of the construction site. Tinted windows, immaculate paint, the kind of car that never stopped around there. A strange silence took over the place. From a driver's seat stepped out a tall man, in an expensive suit, perfectly tied tie, his hair combed back with precision. He looked around frantically, his eyes searching for something desperately, until he saw him. "Miguel," he shouted. "Son." The boy turned immediately, and for the first time, Cicero saw something in his silent gaze he had never seen before. Instant recognition. The boy tried to move his wheelchair, overwhelmed with emotion, but his hands trembled with exhaustion. The man ran, crossed the gate, passed through bricks and paralyzed workers, and knelt before his son. "Miguel, my God. Thank God. Are you okay, son? I looked everywhere for you," he said through tears. Cicero slowly stood up, a few steps away, still holding half of his lunchbox. The man looked at him with an intense, questioning gaze, and then gradually one of gratitude. "Was it you? Were you the one with him?" Cicero swallowed hard. "I didn't know who the boy was. I just saw him there every day, so quiet, and I helped him the best I could. The man stood up. Helped? You fed my son. You gave him shade, gave him clothes, gave him presents. And without knowing who he was. The workers watched in complete silence. No one dared laugh anymore. The man looked at Miguel, who, with a small gesture, pointed to the bricklayer. Then, with tears in his eyes, he extended his hand to Cícero. Nice to meet you. My name is Daniel, and this is my son, Miguel. Cícero shook his hand, still not fully understanding it all. Daniel continued. My son has mild cerebral palsy and autism. Every day, he runs away from home. Today he took too long to come back, and I was already very worried. We have hired caregivers, therapists, private security, but no one made him smile like you did. Cícero looked at the boy, who now watched him with bright eyes. The boy did not speak, but he reached for Cícero's hand. He took it firmly. He didn't want to let go. Daniel took a deep breath. You have no idea what you have done for us. Moved, Cícero murmured. I just did what anyone should do. Daniel looked around. He saw the workers, the makeshift fence, the tarp providing shade, the shared lunchbox. He saw humanity where he least expected it. Then he said firmly, You saw my son not as a problem, nor as a burden. You saw him as a child, and that is worth more than any fortune I have. Cícero didn't know what to say. He just lowered his gaze and breathed deeply. That day, the boy left with his father. But before getting into the car, he made sure to hug Cícero once more. And this time, the workers who had previously mocked them didn't know where to hide their faces. The next morning, the work site seemed different. There was an air of respect in the atmosphere. Even the most sarcastic avoided looking Cícero in the eyes. No one called the boy mascot anymore, nor joked about the shared lunchbox. It was as if, after what everyone had witnessed, Cícero's humility had transformed into something greater, something admirable. But what he didn't expect was that the story was not over yet. Around 10 in the morning, the same luxury car appeared again, but this time without hurry, without tension. The gate to the site was opened by one of the workers, still not believing what he was seeing. Daniel, the boy's father, got out of the car. He wore simpler clothes, but still elegant. There was no desperation in his eyes anymore, only gratitude. He walked over to Cícero, who was mixing mortar with his trowel. The worker stopped, wiped his hands with a rag, and approached without understanding. Good morning, Mr. Daniel. Good morning, Cícero. I came to talk to you, if you'll allow me. Of course, did something happen? Yes, the man replied, looking around. I've been thinking a lot about what I saw yesterday. Cícero lowered his gaze, uncomfortable. Look, if you came to thank me, it's not necessary. I just did what I thought was right. Daniel smiled. I know, and that's precisely why I'm here, because you did the right thing without expecting anything in return. He took an envelope from his pocket and extended it to Cícero, a small token of gratitude. The bricklayer stepped back, shaking his head. Sorry, Mr. Daniel, but I can't accept this. I didn't do this for money. It was never about that. Daniel insisted. Understand, but it's not about the amount. It's about the gesture. Cícero looked at the envelope, took a deep breath, and gently pushed the man's hand down. There are things money can't pay for. Seeing that boy smile, feeling his hand in mine, that's worth more than anything that could fit in that envelope. The businessman silently put the envelope away, but his eyes were full of tears. Cícero, I've never seen anyone treat my son like that. Not at home, not at school, not in hospitals. He ran away because he didn't feel seen. His mother and I work too much, and honestly, we don't always have time for him. But with you, he felt like a person. Cícero looked away, clearly moved. He is a person, Mr. Daniel. He just needed someone to see him as such. It was then that Daniel stepped a little closer. I've decided to build a rehabilitation and support center for children with disabilities, with structure, professionals, but above all, with humanity. Cícero looked up, surprised. And I want you to help me build it. Not just as a bricklayer, but as a leader, as someone who knows what it means to care. Me? Cícero laughed shyly. But I'm just a bricklayer. No, Cícero, you are an example. The news spread around the construction site within minutes. And for the first time, Those same co-workers who used to laugh now approached him with respect. Some patted him on the back, others apologized. But he didn't seem to care about any of that. That night, at home, Cícero told his wife everything. "And did you accept?" she asked, surprised. "I accepted, not because of the offer, but because in that boy's eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in the world for a long time, pure gratitude. And where there is gratitude, there is a mission." 2 months passed since that day. The scene was now different. In the corner of a formerly forgotten neighborhood, the first columns of a new space were rising. Brick stakes, rebar, but there was something different about this construction. There they were building not only with cement, they were building with purpose. It was the beginning of the Miguel Support Center, the project dreamed up by Daniel, the businessman inspired by the bond between his son and a bricklayer who to the world was just another worker. But not to Miguel. Not to those who lived the story. Cícero arrived early every day. Before the sun touched the facade of the future school, he was already there, boots on, cap on, and with a steady gaze. But now, he was no longer the bricklayer with the dented lunchbox. He was the leader of the site, the person responsible for the place, the man everyone trusted. He distributed tasks, organized schedules, but above all, he taught with patience. The newcomers learned from him, and those who had once mocked now only watched in silence. And there, among mixes and hammer strikes, Miguel sometimes appeared. He arrived, pushed by a caregiver, but always asked to be taken to Cícero. The bricklayer, upon seeing him, dropped whatever he was doing, knelt beside him, and said, as always, "The chief engineer has arrived. Want to check the wall again?" Miguel laughed quietly. He didn't speak, but he understood everything. And everyone around understood that there was something there no university taught, empathy built with real bricks. One day, Daniel visited the site with some investors. He showed them the project, spoke about the plans, but before leaving, he asked to speak with all the workers. Cícero was surprised. "I want to introduce you to the reason this center exists," he said, holding an improvised microphone. "And it's not just my son. It's this man." He pointed to Cícero, who tried to step back shy. "This man shared his food with my son, gave him shade, attention. When no one else saw him, he saw him." A deep silence fell over the site. And today, if this building is rising, it's because it first was born in the humanity of a humble man. Cícero swallowed hard. Miguel, beside him, held his hand tightly. That day, Cícero went home in silence. He sat on the porch, watched the sky turn orange, and whispered. One spends a lifetime laying brick upon brick, believing they're just building a wall. He paused. But sometimes, God uses us to build what really matters. His wife, who had been watching him from afar, came over and sat beside him. "And what is it that really matters, Cícero?" He smiled, his eyes moist. "Doing good, even if no one sees it, even if no one believes it." On the day of the center's inauguration, Miguel was seated in the front row. He wore a white shirt with the school's name embroidered on the chest. Cícero, as always, stood at the back, observing quietly. But when they called his name to cut the ribbon, he hesitated. It was Miguel, with an insistent gesture, who beckoned him forward. There, under the applause of dozens of people, businessmen, parents, teachers, children, a humble bricklayer held the golden scissors and heard something he never imagined hearing. "Cícero, please, have the honor of opening the place born from your gesture." He cut the ribbon, and, when it fell, everyone applauded. But Cícero only looked at the boy beside him and whispered, "Thank you, Miguel, for reminding me what it means to be human. Sometimes, a simple piece of bread is worth more than an entire fortune." And a gesture made in silence, without cameras, without an audience, can change not just a day, but the course of a whole life. Cícero asked for nothing. He sought no recognition, but by sharing the little he had, he gave everything someone truly needs: respect, care, and humanity.